Hi, my name is Taylor and welcome to my booktube channel. Today I will be sharing all of the books that I read during the month of November. I had a pretty good reading month in November. I ended up reading 9 books, which I feel like is fairly average for what I tend to read month to month. I feel like I'm ranged from between like 7 to 10 books each month, so it was a pretty good reading month. I really enjoyed all of the books that I read. I think the lowest rating I gave was 3 stars to a few books, and I'll explain about all of those as we go through this. So yeah, let's get started. The first book that I finished in the month of November was Redeemer by David Butler. This was an audiobook that I listened to, and I finished listening to it on the 1st. So I didn't really read it at all in November, except for on the 1st. But this book is basically, the author goes through all of the different names that Christ is called in the Bible, and like digs a little bit deeper to talk about what each of those names mean and how understanding the names of Christ can help us know him better. If you didn't know, or didn't guess, I am a Christian, but I really enjoyed listening to this book. I felt like the author did a great job of bringing humor, but also more of that spiritual aspect into this. There were moments where I was like laughing my head off, and then minutes later I would just be like crying because I just like felt it so deeply and emotionally. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. And the next book that I read in November was Truly Madly Royally, which follows Zora, who is going to a prestigious summer program, and she meets and sort of falls for a prince who's also in the program. But it's a little complicated because, as you would think, he is a prince, and so there's things he has to do, things he can't do. He always has guards with him, but this book was pretty fun. I feel like it lacked a lot of depth that I wanted. I wanted more character growth. I wanted a little bit more tension within the plot. Overall, it was like a very enjoyable read. It was fun and cute. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Alright, the next book that I read was a book that I had from the library, which means I've already returned it, but that was the 12 Dates of Christmas, which is a book that was very like Hallmark movie-esque, and it sort of made me feel like I'd been like transplanted into Stars Hollow, just because of like the small town feature, the small town setting. This book followed Kate, who is signed up for this 12 Dates of Christmas, where she has been like set up and matched with 12 different men, and they go on 12 different dates. This book was, I feel like it was funny and heartfelt, and I hated some of the guys. Then there was also like that, there's also the element of a childhood friend, lover that was kind of still there, and like Kate is just trying to find love. She wants that love and happiness, especially since it's Christmas time, and I feel like it was done pretty well, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished in November was The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. I read this book the week of the election, which was the best choice I made all month, because I knew I needed something that would be quick and light and sort of a distraction from like the chaos of what was happening, and The Gravity of Us did that perfectly. The Gravity of Us follows Cal, who is an aspiring online journalist who has a very big social media following, and he gives a lot of great news, updates, and things. And he lives in New York City, and then he's transplanted to Texas after his father is picked to be an astronaut for this Mars trip. This book takes place in sort of like an alternate reality of 2020, where they are going to Mars to start a settlement there, which is really fun. But they get to Texas and they have to be filmed because there's this TV show about the astronauts and their families and what's happening before the mission, but there's some other shady stuff happening. And Cal meets and sort of falls for one of the astronauts' sons, Leon. guys, this book was just like, how do I even explain what it was like? I just loved it so much. The writing was phenomenal. Phil, write more books, please, because I will buy them all, read them all. The romance was so sweet and tender as they're like figuring it out, and like it's just like all those things in a good YA novel that you love. And it was just, I felt like I finished reading it and I was like, wow, no matter what happens, we're gonna be okay. Like, this book just filled me up with so much hope. It was phenomenal. Another library book that I read in November was One to Watch. So One to Watch follows Bia, who is a plus-size fashion blogger who has a very large following, but she has an article go viral that's all about how this reality TV show, very similar to like The Bachelorette, only casts these women who are very like model type women. And she's like, why is this a thing still? Like, why is this still happening? And so then the producer reaches out to her and says, hey, will you be on our show? Let's help you find love and show our viewers that we're not just gonna cast like the same type of women or men on this show. Bia says yes as a way to sort of further advance her career because she's not really sure if she will actually find love on this show. So that's the synopsis. I really loved the ending. I loved some of the men, like Sam. He was like my favorite character in this book. But I feel like, yeah, let's just get into it. I personally don't love watching The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Like, the show annoys me most of the time, and I know a lot of people love it, and that's awesome. It's just not really for me, but I feel like this book is perfect if you love those shows, because I enjoyed reading it, but there were so many things that like frustrate me about the show that frustrated me in the book. The producers, the unnecessary drama that the producers create. So yeah, there were just like things that irked me in the real life TV show that irked me in this book. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. And the next book that I read in November was I Want to Be Where You Are, which follows Chloe, who is an aspiring ballerina, but she doesn't want to like disobey her mother. And her mom has said, like, no, you are not auditioning for this dance studio in New York, even though that is Chloe's biggest dream. So when her mother goes on a cruise, Chloe decides that she is going to take a road trip and audition behind her mom's back. Just as she's about to leave, the neighbor boy says, oh, hey, Chloe, can I come with you? I need a ride, because he's going to the same state where his father lives, which is also where the audition is. And so Chloe's like, fine, like, I don't like you, you don't like me, we'll just do this. It's a very funny and charming story. I feel like there was good anxiety representation and just sort of following your heart, even if that's not necessarily what the people around you want. I loved Chloe. I loved the sort of like, I love the trope that of like, oh, we're friends, but now we sort of don't like each other because there was this misunderstanding, but maybe there's actually something more. That's one of my favorite tropes, which this book had. And there was a road trip, and like, it's just a lot of fun. So this book I gave 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in November and tied for my favorite so I loved The Gravity of Us, and then I also loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. This book has actually been a book that I've been sort of reading for a few months. It is definitely a slower burn, but it's also just like a big warm hug, and I already want to read it again. But The House in the Cerulean Sea follows Linus, who is a caseworker for the Department of Magical Youth, and he visits these orphanages where magical children live because they aren't really accepted in regular society. He gets an unexpected assignment to go to this island where this orphanage lives, where he meets these children who are like the most different, and like their powers are different than anything he has ever seen. And I feel like this book is all about like acceptance and finding real purpose and meaning in your life, and not necessarily going with like the norms of society, because maybe they weren't actually always right. This book, yeah, it's just like, I'm just gonna hug it. I loved it so much. Yeah, that's it. That's all. Alright, the last two books that I want to talk about that I read in November are, first, You Have a Match by Emma Lord. This book comes out in January. I received an ARC on NetGalley, and I feel like, and Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, which came out earlier this year, was one of my favorite novels of 2020. And so I was very excited when I got a copy of You Have a Match, which follows Abby, who takes this DNA test and learns that she has a sister who lives just 30 minutes away that she's never met, and this girl has never met her, and they didn't know each other existed. This book is all sort of about like learning how to be family and navigating that growing up age, like before your senior year of high school, and just trying to figure out what life is going to look like going forward. This book was hilarious. I feel like Emma Lord she is great with the witty and funny dialogue. She is also great at really making you hungry. I feel like in Tweet Cute it was more of like the sweet food that you were craving by the end. And then You Have a Match, I was like, I need all these like delicious meals that you're talking about here. So I love that aspect. I gave that 5 out of 5 stars. It was so fun. I can't wait to read it again, and I just can't wait for all of you to read it too. The last book that I read in November was In the Holidays by Christina Lauren. I listened to this on audio. I will be buying myself a copy because I cannot wait to read it again already. Yeah. I feel like everyone is reading this book right now simply because it's Christmas time. It's a Christmassy book. But this book follows May, who has just had this really great Christmas reunion trip with her family and some very close family friends, but she's afraid that she sort of wrecked everything because she has kissed one of the sons, even though she's been in love with the other son for nearly half her life. And then they find out that the owners of the cabin are planning to sell, which means that was the last Christmas that they would all spend together at the cabin. And as they are heading back to the airport, May throws this wish out into the universe and says, please show me what will make me happy. And then in a Groundhog Day type situation, she keeps going back in time and waking up on the plane to Park City, where the cabin is, and starting this vacation over again. This book was hilarious. I was like, I was dying. I was laughing so hard. And I feel like this book did a really great job of like bringing in the nostalgia of holiday traditions, and also like figuring out what it means to be a 26-year-old growing up and still trying to be like, shouldn't I have my life figured out? I don't have my life figured out. And she's just trying to figure out what she really wants and how that will make, like, how she can live the life that she wants and what that looks like for her. I loved the romance. The love interest was, I just loved him. He was great. Like, but I loved the romance. I loved the male lead. Like, he was phenomenal. All of the side characters were funny and just I feel like they really elevated the story. They weren't there just to be there. Each served a purpose, and I really loved that. I gave In the Holidays 5 out of 5 stars. So those are all of the books that I read during November. I really feel like I had a great reading month, and I would love to hear about the books that you read in November. And yeah, just tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. Have you read any of the books that I read? Do we share any similar thoughts? I'd love to hear about it. And as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I post bookish videos every single week, and I will see you soon.